Welcome in. Happy Friday. You made it to the end of the week. I'm Jesse Montano, going to be joined by the one and only Meghan Angley here in just a moment. This is Guerilla Sports Off Ice. We got John behind the glass today, making it all happen for us on this Friday afternoon. It has been a doozy of a month for the Colorado Avalanche as January mercifully is coming to an end for the Avs. They will have one more game before the calendar officially tips over, but Meghan and I are just going to unpack what has been a messy month for the Colorado Avalanche to start 2026 as we barrel towards that Olympic break. And then we are going to fully dive in and unpack the Sam Malinski extension and what it might mean for the makeup of the roster as a whole. But really, we are going to key in on the fact that Sam Malinski has earned this deal, has kind of climbed his way up through the ranks here, and to see him get rewarded for that contract. One, that's a development win for the Avs. And two, you always like to see individuals who work hard, put in the effort, get rewarded. And I think I speak for Meghan and myself in saying we've covered Sam Malinski's entire NHL career, and we both feel like this is a deal that he has earned. So we're going to get into all of it. But I do want to start by telling you guys, talking about this beautiful furniture that we've got here in the Guerilla Sports studio, provided by our friends over at Furniture Row. They are a family-owned company that offers high-quality home furniture at an incredible value. And today, Furniture Row has grown to over 100 locations across the USA in order to make shopping at Furniture Row something that works for everyone in every state. And they've designed their business on three core values: terrific selection, unbeatable value, and a knowledgeable staff. People love shopping at Furniture Row because of their wonderful sales staff, and their associates have become legendary in the furniture industry for their expert knowledge and friendly, no pressure demeanor. The power of an enjoyable, hassle-free shopping experience. People love being able to shop for their living room, dining room, and bedroom furniture, all at one location for a superior shopping experience. It's real furniture. It's real value. Furniture Row and FurnitureRow.com. Hey, everybody. Welcome in Guerilla Sports Off Ice Friday edition. You made it to the end of the week. I'm Jesse Montano. This is Meghan Angley in a turtleneck tank top. I couldn't be a bigger fan. How you doing?
Thank you so much. This is the second turtleneck tank top that I've bought because I love the first one so much. You guys could probably guess I have weird temperature regulation. Like I get hot so easily, even in the colder months. And so this is the perfect type of shirt for me to wear.
The turtleneck tank top, like it's like counterintuitive almost. And like I said, I couldn't possibly love it anymore.
It's perfect.
It's perfect. And you know what? These last couple of days have been difficult temperature regulation days in Colorado in general.
Yeah.
Very sunny. It's clear out, but you have like that cold breeze that's passing through occasionally. So turtleneck tank top, sometimes you just got to do it.
If you run a little warm.
Is that wool?
Perfect.
Is that
probably no. Is that wool?
Meghan, you and I did a post-game show last night after the Quebec Nordiques, the Colorado Nordiques, took on the Montreal Canadiens.
I don't claim what we saw last night as Colorado Avalanche hockey.
Took on the Montreal Canadiens, and 2 nights in a row, Meghan, just not Colorado Avalanche hockey, disappointing results. To go along with what's definitely been a disappointing month for the Avs. You and I don't even think our hands are like raised to go near a panic button. I don't think you and I are concerned, big picture, long term, anything like that. But at the end of the day, that has not been Avalanche hockey. It's not been acceptable to the standard that this group has set. And I think they would be the first ones to tell you that. Scott Wedgwood tried to take a bunch of the blame, but I'm not going to ask you to unpack last night's game because we did that last night in the post game right here on the Guerilla Sports YouTube channel. But I do want to ask you how you feel last night and the game the night before in Ottawa have related to just kind of the picture that we've seen painted for the Avalanche across the entire month of January.
Yeah, and I don't want to steal your thunder if you plan to talk about this, but I wanted to compare side by side the record of the Avs going into the Four Nations break last year.
I didn't plan on doing this. So
okay, perfect. So they are 5-6-2 in this month of January so far. They've lost 8 of their last 12 with 3 games to go. So they're going to have, kind of keeping January as that point ahead of the break.
Mm-hmm.
That's 16 games. They had 19 games that they squeezed in January leading into the Four Nations break last year. They were 7-6-2 in January.
Interesting.
10-7-2 ahead of the break. So honestly, almost an identical record that the Avs can replicate. They can certainly too in the month of January with the game coming up this weekend, kind of match it. And where I'm going with this is coming out of that Four Nations break, they were 12-4-2 in the month of March. And so that condensed schedule ahead of the Four Nations break was hard on them last year too, almost identically.
Wow.
And they had a really great bounce back in the month of March because understandably there is some fatigue setting in. And the thing is, this is a league-wide problem. So
100%.
It's not to elicit sympathy for the Colorado Avalanche who've had this dominant record and have stumbled so far. It's just kind of a natural thing that has happened to them last year. They came out of it. And I wanted to kind of start with that. Because understandably, like people are very concerned about the power play so specifically.
Yep. And can I just real quick, I just want to jump on what you were saying there about like it being kind of a league-wide thing. This isn't anyone stumping for sympathy for the Avs. Elliot Friedman last week on the 32 Thoughts podcast mentioned that the league has heard feedback from managers, players, owners on not only this year's schedule, but last year's schedule, also condensed for the Four Nations break. And they have another one coming up, not next season, but the following with the World Cup. And Elliot Friedman said that the league is aware of the fact that teams have not been happy with how compressed the schedule has been. And they are actively looking into solutions for this problem the next time we're going to have a mid-season break. So I just wanted to throw that out there that again, it's not the Avs looking for sympathy or you and I saying that people should feel bad for the Avs. This is something that has affected the entire league at different points throughout the season, to the point that the NHL and their schedule makers are going, okay, we can't do this again in 2 years.
Right. It's just not a great product from an entertainment standpoint, with the players being a bit worn down. And then the stakes of this break are a lot higher for the athletes that will be competing in the Olympics. And so I think understandably too, I appreciated that. I felt the players in Four Nations really did take it seriously. And I think that's just ramped up even more with the expectation around the Olympic break and competing in the Olympics. And so I think that you're going to see that affect players differently, but there might be some players who are a little bit more withdrawn and conservative in these games ahead of the Olympic break if they're eyeing down the Olympics. And similarly, the Avs have dealt with some key injuries to Devon Toews and Gabriel Landeskog. Again, it's to validate the concerns that those are two really important players, that they need to look inwards then a little bit about what they do if those players were, by some terrible misfortune, not available to them in the playoffs. They've lived in that reality with Gabriel Landeskog before, and it was really challenging. So I think people are rightfully feeling uncomfortable right now with where the Avs are at as we get closer to that break, just because it's familiar problems in how difficult it is without Gabriel Landeskog and how challenging a frustrating power play can be. And so I don't want to minimize people's concerns. I want to validate that those are real things to be worried about, and also maybe alleviate some of that worry in just raising the issue of this condensed schedule too.
Yeah, 100%. And we got a comment here in the chat from Mel. It says it's not the team overall that is the issue. It's the power play, which is a problem that isn't going away after the break. So I actually am going to disagree with this just a little bit, because to me, like the power play has been an issue all season.
Right.
And it hasn't stopped the Avs. Like it hasn't even, really slowed them down up until a couple weeks ago, because the 5-on-5 play has been so elite and so consistent. To me, it's the 5-on-5 even strength play that we've seen from the Avs this month that has just not been up to par. That has not been where we've seen it, was just not been at the standard that they've set, and the details have been terrible. I also do want to, and this is something that I just have an issue with. When people talk about pro athletes not caring, not trying, like I said, I will go on any pro sports podcast, not forget hockey, forget Avs, and defend the fact that these are pro athletes. They care about this more than anything. And if you actually think that a guy like Nathan McKinnon is going to go out there and just not try, then I don't have any time for that kind of take. You know what I mean? I think you can absolutely criticize sloppiness. poor attention to details. Hey, that was a lazy shift. He didn't make the right play. Absolutely. But I just, I have seen a lot of that sentiment of like, their guys their top guys just aren't trying. It's clear their top guys don't care. I don't think this is a care or try issue. I just think that the details have gotten sloppy. And, like you said, I think there's some guys that are maybe being a little bit more conservative in things here and there with Olympics coming up. I just, I said it last night. I think I asked Jared Bednar about it 2 weeks ago or a week and said, hey, you got 10 games between now and the break. How do you keep it focused? And he acknowledged, like, it's going to be a challenge. Guys are tired. Schedule's been compressed. We're ready for a break. It's going to be a challenge to keep that intensity at the level that it has been. And to me, when I look at it, I just think that is the part that is wavered and why I'm not concerned about this team coming out of the break. And as far as the power play, yeah, it remains something that they got to get fixed. But like I said on a show earlier this week, people can be frustrated with Hackstall, with coaching, whatever. The players on the ice are going to be the ones that have to get that fixed because, one, they're the ones who have to execute, and two, Nathan McKinnon's the power play coach for PP1. He is. You know what I mean? Not on paper. If you go to the website, that's not what's going to be listed under his name. But like him and Kale make and break that power play, and that they are going to have to be the ones to work through it.
Yeah, and when you look at the issues on the power play, it has been a couple of common threads. The issue of forcing kind of set ideas around plays they'd like to execute, and when met with some kind of a conflict, the pivot is just not there. And sometimes too, you see the confidence wear, and it leads to indecision, and that leads to hesitation, and it leads to broken plays. And so I think a lack of decisiveness and versatility on the power play, which is a stubbornness linked to its core players, because it's not an issue of familiarity among each other, but it is an issue of forcing things that have worked before, and not being flexible enough when met with a penalty kill unit that is wise to some of those tendencies on the power play. And there's then a need for a little bit of diversity in what they hope to accomplish and flexibility then. And I think too, like the power play just over this last stretch has lacked a little bit of that killer instinct to jump on some of these pucks when the play does inevitably break, and really battle for them below the goal line. So I won't get too lost in the sauce as to like my assessment of what's going wrong with the power play, but I will affirm that this all comes back to the players being the ones to right this ship.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see criticism of them utilizing the same entry method, and that being the issue. And I view that as less of the problem, because like Edmonton's power play deploys the same entry strategy as well, and it's effective just because of the talent that is there. I think that the Fs still have a talent base that should be more successful, because they've had a top 5 power play in the league every season before this, and it's just cost them in playoff runs when that sustainability isn't there. So the issue with it not only being a failing power play in the regular season, that is a bit of a deviation from what we've normally seen the Avs power play do in the regular season. So that absolutely is grounds for concern. But it's also concerning that a power play that performed well in the regular season, seasons prior, struggled against Dallas. So where I'm going with this is it is in the players' hands to right that ship. Yep. And in looking at what's going on with the team now 5v5, because I think the Avs were excellent 5v5 against Dallas, so much so that it became that was the margin. Then it was the power play and a just okay penalty kill that was otherwise a lot better outside of that series that separated them from the Stars advancing. And so I think the greater issue here in seeing what is normally good for the team, possession 5v5, falter over this last stretch is a bandwidth issue. I don't view it as truly an engagement issue, but it appears that way. So it appears like a conversation then around commitment and effort. I view it more as a bandwidth issue in the condensed schedule and kind of where that mental bandwidth is then a bit spent and a bit spread thin. And this is where, I've heard Cale Makar talk about, like, in the Dallas series, composure is an interesting conversation around the team, because you want to see them when their bandwidth is, maybe spread a little bit thin, dig a little bit deeper. But I think that's more so what it is. I don't think it's a lack of care from the team. I think a reset and a recharge will benefit them. And, that 12-4-2 record they had in March coming out of the Four Nations break, because they've had such a strong start to this season, I expect the same thing. I think that a couple of things have also lined up at the right time or wrong time, depending on how you look at it. The injury to Mackenzie Blackwood that kept him out of the lineup at the start of the year, then he gets back in. It takes him about 3 games to get back up to game speed before he looks quite like himself. He returns from injury this time around, and it's right in this stretch where they're just not playing their best hockey. They're just not all there mentally. And so I think that Mackenzie Blackwood's performance would have, continued to trend upward. But it just, his return to play was alongside this time where the team's just battling themselves a little bit. And so I think it's also just a perfect combination of things appearing worse than they are outside of the power play, which has been worrisome all year.
And here's the thing I'll say about the power play. And again, this is a sentiment that Jared Bednar echoed. Like, if you want to win a Stanley Cup, it'll be because of your 5-on-5 play. As you, with every round you go deeper, and the Dallas Stars are the literal case study for this the last 2 years. With every round you go deeper, you get fewer and fewer power play opportunities by the game. If folks remember back to the 2022 Cup final, man, I think you could count on one hand the amount of power plays the Avs had across that entire series. You need to be a good fight. You need to be a good, even strength team. And then, yeah, again, that's not me saying the power play isn't important, but Dallas won round 1 on their power play last year. And then when the power play opportunities dried up, they could not score as the playoffs went deeper. That was a team that lived and died by their power play. And when those opportunities went away, they couldn't put pucks in the net. So I would much, much, much rather go into a postseason, saying we feel really good about where our 5-on-5 game is, rather than, our 5-on-5 game is shaky, but hey, our power play is great. It's just, again, it just doesn't translate. And then just one thing I wanted to point out, and I'm not trying to call them out here. But this is just a sentiment I have seen so much, and it's just factually not true. From the Mikko Rantanen trade to the end of last regular season, the Avs had the number 1 power play in the NHL. Marty Netras and Nathan MacKinnon were dynamic on that power. I don't know if it stayed number 1 like week over week, but by the end of the season, from the Rantanen trade to the end, they had the number 1 power play in the league. And that was another reason why it was so jarring when it just went away in that first round of the playoffs. So again, like, the Avs, this version of the Avs has shown that they can execute on the man advantage. I think there's a few things that are compounding it right now. And more than anything else, this is just me, I just think they're in their own heads. Yeah. I think they're frustrated with that power play.
Oh, you can see it boil over too, in players like Nathan MacKinnon, and honestly, some of those shorthanded chances against, I think, are born from frustration and kind of that stubbornness to accept when that set play you had in mind going into it doesn't go according to plan. I think that's where Brock Nelson, because he's sort of outside of that, like, he's not been a part of this core, and so he brings something a little bit different. And similarly, when Marty Netras joined newly last year, I think that offered that fresh perspective that helped to kind of deviate then from some of that stubbornness, I'll call it. And they need to maybe tap into that a little bit. I think that's where even Olofsson has had some success in bursts. The trouble with all 3 of those players, and it's not specific to them, is it has not been sustainable because it requires everyone in that 5-man unit being bought into that kind of flexible mentality. And so I think, just going back to the Rantanen thing, the power play had stagnated ahead of that trade.
Right.
And Rantanen had sort of reverted to this very predictable player on the power play, because he was great for a one-timer from the circle, but there were plays that made Rantanen dangerous on that top unit where he would rotate below the goal line and find seams. And so when Rantanen kind of stopped doing that and was more focused on operating inside the circle, it became predictable again. So where I'm going with this is we were frustrated with the power play right before that trade happened. Net just brought this newness to it. And a lot of it was because of the movement and the rotation that he added, using his speed and dynamic skating. And so really, I'm not here with, some golden solution for the Avs power play, because it's really, like you just said, they're in their own heads. They're the key to getting out of this trouble. And I think it's just going to require like a real rehabilitation period, with I don't know, like, that look in the mirror type conversation with each other, with themselves, that breaks free from some of this stubbornness that has them in its clutches right now.
And then two things, and I want to move on from this conversation to the Sam Malinski conversation. But one, the other thing for folks to keep in mind, again, with things like this, and it's why you never want to, rely on your power play to win you games. Again, as we saw last year, the Avs went from having a power play that was not working to literally coming out of that trade. It started working great. And then you got to the first round and it stopped. These things are things that you're constantly having to work on and tweak and make changes to, because they do change in fluctuations like that. And then two, I gotta call out Mel again here in the chat. There's a second part to this. It says Jared Bednar can say that, but the Avs lost in the first round because of the power play. It was the reason they lost. The second part of that is their penalty kill was also a major problem in that first round series. They were losing the special teams battle pretty much every night because they could not keep power play goals out of their own net. If your power play is going to struggle, you have to have a strong kill, which we saw the Avs have at the beginning of the year. And it's why it didn't cost them so many games. So not saying that the power play wasn't an issue, but there's so much more of a full picture to paint than couldn't score on power play, lose game.
Yeah, and Ottinger played out of his mind in that series. I thought Blackwood was good, but Ottinger was excellent. And so that's where the 5v5 play being so strong for the Avs was frustrating, because process-wise, they were doing so much to try and create chances. Dallas defensively was containing McKinnon and Makar extremely well. So that's why there's, the power play, absolutely a concern. There's greater concern outside of it generally. Like, you want to see the depth scoring, also find ways then, because teams are going to, in their game plan for playoffs, specifically key in on shutting down Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon.
Right.
And so I credit Tanev in the series before as being a huge reason that Dallas had success. Some of that being, without Vanatushkin in that series before it as well. But where I'm going with this is, it is important that they get the power play straight, but it's more dimensional than that too. Because the penalty kill I felt was good, as the season came to an end. Charlie Coyle being a really good addition on the kill, who struggled in the playoffs specifically and in managing lanes that he otherwise had done so well before. So really, it was other things. I want to affirm that too.
Yeah.
Power play just kind of top of list.
For sure. It highlighted everything, right?
Just kind of the cherry on top of a really bad Sunday.
All right, let's move on from the negative here. Friday afternoon, Sam Malinski gets a new deal this week, Megan. We talked about it a little bit last night, but it's 4 years. It's $19 million to keep Sam Malinski in Colorado. You and I honestly kind of thought, man, maybe he'll get the Sam Girard deal. The Avs actually end up getting him for less than that on the AAV. Let's just start from the Sam Malinski side of all of it. I went on a Daily Face-Off earlier this week and just talked about it. And such a player that the Avs target, right? High character, leadership, hard worker. And then on top of that, he just stylistically checks a lot of boxes they like to check. He told you and I believe it was last year, that one of the reasons he picked Colorado was because of Cale Makar. And he's a guy that he tried to model his game off of. And I think you and I talk about that a lot, that we see flashes of Cale Makar-esque play from a guy like Sam Malinski. His game translated to the pro level immediately. Came from Cornell and immediately was an impact player with the Eagles, and it just felt like every opportunity he got in the NHL, he made the most of it until ultimately, culminating in him signing this extension this week. Broad strokes, your thoughts on seeing Sam Malinski rewarded with a 4-year deal?
Yeah, I said in a mailbag that I thought it would be 4x5, like $5 million per year for 4 years.
Yep.
So I think the term makes a lot of sense with a player 27 years old. Like, I think we still think of him as being a younger prospect, but to think back to Sam Girard signing the 7-year deal with the Avs at age 21, this actually, invests in Sam Malinski's future window with the team a little bit past that, I think, because of the trust that he's earned. And I know that the side-by-side often is drawing comparisons then between these two players, but I think that there are certainly similarities. But Malinski has separated too in kind of bringing about his own unique identity as a player. Stepping outside of some of the things they have in common is puck-moving defensemen, both really elite skaters. Like their NHL Edge stats side by side this year favor Malinski in a lot of ways, but it's his shot that really separates the two and has been this welcome addition to the back end. I think that it all comes alongside too the addition of Brent Burns and the way that he likes to play, having a really positive influence on the rest of the D core. And I think Malinski came into this year with higher confidence with the way that he came out of the Four Nations break, and then some of the trust that he earned in the playoffs, because they brought Eric Johnson back for that last go around, and this was a player that they could more easily trust to absorb some PK minutes in playoff hockey, but they saw something in Malinski that offered something a little bit different, that they wanted to give him a little bit more runway, and I think that translated to a summer of hard work. He starts this year. Each year, I think he's physically gotten stronger, and he's in that class of undersized defensemen. But this year, the biggest difference for me that I think helped to secure that extension is he has become a little bit stronger, a little bit harder to play against. And I think as he continues to lean into that side of his game, it will make him so much more versatile then in how he's utilized and trusted, because I think the PK is where Sam Girard, has separated. He's just had more reps, more minutes in totality. And so I think that Sam Malinski can replicate what Sam Girard does on the PK down the line, but they've also had with Brent Burns less of a need for Malinski to be the one eating those minutes now, but I think that's part of his future, is becoming more of a PK specialist akin to what Girard does. And then offensively, where you look at the point per game pace that he has trended at since he's come to the pro level, he establishes this baseline and then he just elevates it from there. And that's been the trend. So my expectation is that offensively, his impact, it's been so wonderful to see him confident and just shooting more generally this year. But I think that's where we haven't even fully seen what Malinski is capable of. And then the other part of that is what he's doing in his own end to shut down plays more quickly and just be a little bit harder to play against than maybe people expect. All of that put together is not only a really well-rounded defenseman, but a defenseman that fits in so well within the Avs system. It was a no-brainer, I think, for the front office to see the upside in this player.
Well, and to see the upside in this player a few years ago and understand, hey, that this is a guy who, checks all the boxes that you just said. And Megan, like, I'm gonna give the Avs some credit here. Like, here's a developmental win for the organization, and one that is rightfully criticized for not having a lot of these. Like, this is a college UFA that you brought into your organization, and you've turned out a legitimate NHL every night player from it. So give credit to the organization for the development, give credit to Sam Malinski for putting in the work and doing everything that's been asked of him. And I agree with you in terms of the similarities and differences, for Sam Girard. And the other one that I'm going to draw, and this is something that I believe we talked about on the show already, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself here. But him as it relates to the Bowen Byram role from a few years ago and how important of a player that was for the Avs back end, not only in how effective he was with his minutes, but the fact that you had a guy who was that effective with his minutes at a low dollar figure, which the Avs still have for Sam Malinski this year. And then truthfully, I do think, and we'll get to this in a second, we don't have to jump to it right now, but like this, I have been pretty anti-trade Sam Girard for a number of years. because of how highly I think of Sam Girard's game. And he's an elite skater. I think he's a way better defenseman than he gets credit for. He kills penalties, all the stuff you just said. This has officially opened the door, though, in my opinion, Megan, to you're probably looking at Sam Girard on the way out, whether it be this deadline or maybe over the summer. You're now able to replace a guy like Sam Girard with someone cheaper who provides you maybe a lot of positives that in certain situations, maybe Sam Girard doesn't, even though G's got his strengths, things like that. You're actually potentially looking at a world where you could get cheaper on your second pairing going into next year.
Yeah, I think in looking at the NHL Edge stats, I was surprised to see where Malinski's skating has actually kind of come away from Sam Girard's, and that's just year by year comparison. So I think, Sam Girard having missed some time probably impacts where those numbers are tracking, but in the 94th percentile for max skating speed, Sam Malinski top 90 percentile in every other category of speed burst, but he's also then in that 92nd percentile for the hardest shot and 88th percentile for the average shot speed. And honestly, his shots per game has always been a little bit higher than Girard, who has a much bigger body of work. Girard, where it's been tricky with him is his production hasn't been super consistent. And so he's had 2 really productive seasons, one of those being 2021, where he had 32 points in 48 games, but it wasn't a full season. And so the point per game pace, I think, especially just like side by side right now, favors Malinski from a reliability standpoint. And then Malinski is just more inclined to shoot more. And then the defensive metrics have always analytically looked really great for Malinski. I think some of that's the quality of competition, which then makes his production this year stand out to me. 3 goals, 22 assists, and 25 points in 52 games, having predominantly played a third pair role and not getting the power play opportunity. And so that's 5v5 production from a third pair role, obviously being elevated now in this kind of back half of the season. I think that that's where there's so much more to give, akin to a Bowen Byron role then, is just this extension of the offensive threat from the back end out. And it's not just Makar and Taves. Then, Byram had so many grade A chances in the 2022 Cup run. That I think it can be that X factor for the Avs from the back end out for years to come too, just in looking at the trajectory Malinski is on.
Yeah, no, you're 100% with you on the, like you said, the trajectory that he's on. And I also just wanted to point out, like, Devon Taves went out, and one of the things that I think has jumped off the page the most to me about Sam Malinski's pro career is calm, cool, collected. Never looks panicked, never looks like he's, rushing to make a play. That's not saying he makes the right play every single time. He doesn't make any mistakes, but like he never looks flustered, never looks like the moment, the situation's too much for him. And I think what's emphasized that for me is Devon Taves went out. They tried a couple different things there with Cale Makar. And ultimately what has lasted the longest has been Sam Malinski playing on his offside on the top pair opposite Cale Makar. And again, has he been as good as Devon Taves there? No. But I don't think he's looked at like horribly out of place. And you're again just looking at a guy that, okay, I'm also not suggesting he's, a top pairing guy right now, but like this is a guy that can give you really quality minutes in his role and is now starting to show you that he's a smart enough and reliable enough player that if you need to flex him up your lineup for an injury or something like that, he can give you those quality minutes playing next to a guy like Cale Makar. And that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's only his second full NHL season. He got a little bit of second pair opportunity last year. And I think, if you asked Jared Bednar about it, he'd be kind of underwhelmed. But I also don't think it was a bad experience. I just don't think he was fully ready to assume second pair responsibilities in his first full year in the NHL. But I think with my comfortability around what Girard is as a second pair defenseman, because I believe he is, because of how similar these players are, I feel confident saying that about Malinski too, and what his possible role is for the future then. And that's why I like the no trade protection for the first 2 years of this contract, to give him a little bit of stability and some room to breathe, because I just imagine there's been some layer of that in signing, as a free agent out of college and trying to crack a decor that has Cale Makar atop it,
Right.
trying to find his path. And, that type of player is represented then in a player like Girard. Like, the odds maybe weren't in his favor, and he's worked really hard to get to this point. So hopefully there's something to be said for being able to breathe a sigh of relief, have more confidence in himself now, with the future a little bit clearer for him and what his path is in Colorado. And so I hope that just inspires even more confident play. You just mentioned something about his calm resolve, and there was a play last night, not a great game, but I see him running out of runway and protecting the puck at the point. His guy is gapping up on him, and he sends it deep, and it was the right decision. And I'm not an NHL defenseman for a reason, because I would have chosen something so different and so panicked if I was in that exact situation, is where I'm going.
It is a full no trade clause in years 1 and 2 of the extension, and then a modified no trade clause where he and his agent get to submit a 10-team no trade list. And yeah, like you said, that's for an Avalanche organization that maybe the cupboards haven't been fully stocked with a bunch of great prospects. To your point, yeah, for a guy like Sam Malinski, as you're rising the ranks here and you're looking at the decor, like, oh, that's a tough one to crack. Am I suddenly on this list of guys that they might be looking to move because I'm a prospect that has some value? So yeah, to be able to breathe a little bit easier for the next 2 years, not have to worry about A, contract negotiations in general, but B, being traded out from under you. Look, I think it's very well deserved for Sam Malinski, and I do think that this rewards a guy who I think is filling an important role for the Avs right here on a cheap deal. And 2, it's going to give you great flexibility and just a player to be excited about that. Hey, this is a player that's come up through your organization, developed into an everyday NHLer on your back end in a position of need. And you're not having to go out and spend an asset to get this, go out and bid on a guy in free agency. This is a great bit of business for the Avs. And truthfully, Megan, getting this done under $5 million is cheaper than I thought they were going to. So good value, good business for the Avs. Great deal for Sam Malinski. It's a lot of money. That's life-changing money and some security. I think this is one where everybody's happy on all sides.
Yeah, because even the Girard contract right now at $5 million per year has been viewed as pretty, team friendly.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Has helped them to round out the decor construction. And so for it to come in under $5 million, with the cap only going up from here and a Makar extension on the horizon, this bit of business with Malinski allows them. Not that there was ever any doubt that they would get it done with Makar, but it allows it all to be possible.
Right, 100%. And now you've got geez Louise. So Devon Taves locked up 7.2, which is already a great deal, great value deal. You got Josh Manson locked up for 2 years beyond this one at under $4 million. Sam Malinski under $5 million starting next year. And then, Cale Makar, $9 million next year, and then whatever he wants after that. But given that Cale Makar has a whatever he wants blank check,
right,
it is important. It is critically important that you have these other guys locked up at what are probably already considered, and as the cap continues to move, will definitely be considered team-friendly deals.
And what I'll say too is, I don't know where Girard fits in the future picture here, and it's really not an indictment on Girard. They will have an easier time filling left side than they will right. They've locked up the right side. You can count on Makar being re-signed, And so now with Manson, Makar, and Malinski, that's not a future worry. That's always a little bit harder to fill. They make, like the Sean Walker trade, I think back to a couple deadlines back, wasn't a crazy expense or anything, but it's harder to find the right-handed defenseman. So to have that locked up, I think, is by design, because there's a confidence that they can go into free agency this summer if they need to and bolster the left side even more. And I think that is a little bit easier to digest than needing to bolster the right.
I'm with you fully on that. All right, let's change gears here and wrap it up. I got a little bit of a heart out here. I got to get out in just a few minutes, but this is an update that I think you're going to like. Elliot Friedman this morning on the 32 Thoughts podcast, they kicked their show off by addressing the Artemi Panarin. I mean, some developments since we last sat down and talked about it. He's now being held out of Ranger games between now and the Olympic break because trade talks have picked up that much among several different teams that they are trying to avoid injury or anything like that nefarious happening in a game. Two teams that Elliot Friedman addressed right off the top, the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. So that for both teams, that Artemi Panarin's camp has made it clear they are looking for a trade that comes with an extension, and they are looking in the range of $50 million for that extension. Elliot Friedman did mention that from his understanding, both the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche have had extended talks, or I shouldn't use the word extended, have had several talks with the New York Rangers, but that right now, neither of those teams are willing to do it with an extension. Both teams would be interested in the player as a pure rental. And Elliot Friedman said, unless something drastic changes in terms of what Panarin's camp is wanting and what he was referring to both Colorado and Dallas, those camps change or what Panarin's camp is changing, it's not going to happen. So, as is the popular mantra in this industry, everything can change with one phone call. But as of right now, Megan, it sounds like anti-Panarin fans can breathe easier. It just doesn't, as we kind of speculated that we didn't see the easy path for it to fit for the Avs. And it sounds like that's kind of what's being discussed behind the scenes anyways.
Yeah. And looking at the list of teams that have been in the Panarin sweepstakes, it's really lengthy. So
robust.
Colorado being among them, obviously I'm like, let's hang up that phone. We don't actually need to pick that one up. But I think it's because they just consider any and all options that could make them better as a team. And so I think that it's more simply that. And
it'd be a disservice to your franchise to not check in on everything. That's bad business if you aren't at least picking up the phone and saying, okay, well, how much? What's the contract? Just for any available player, especially one that scores 95 points. But I'm with you. I think that's mostly what it is.
Yeah. If I had to rank the teams that have been most seriously invested in these conversations with things like possibility of extension, I just don't think Colorado's very high in that list of a lot of teams.
Yeah. And again, like I said, I feel this way about, most players who you feel can be an impact. You're doing your franchise a disservice if you aren't calling and checking on that stuff. So, but
there's an Arturi Lehkonen extension on the horizon here soon.
Yep.
And there are just other players I find more culturally relevant to the Colorado Avalanche.
And it also makes sense with, Lehkonen extension, Makar extension, why the Avs are saying, no, we're not looking extension. If we're getting this guy, we want him for 2 months and then we're going to, turn the page. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And even more so with how many teams are in on it, this isn't going to be a Claude Giroux situation where it's like, I'm only going to this one team. So you get them for pennies on the dollar.
Right.
You're getting into a bidding war here. And you're paying full boat, especially if you're, in a team like in the Avs position where you would need retention and all kinds of stuff. I just don't think I don't think the Avs, like you said, are high up that list. And the most plugged in insiders and people that have more access, we'll say, than you and I do, are basically saying the same. Yep, they've checked, but things don't really align. That's about it.
That's all
I got. I haven't really. Have you heard anything else? Trade anything? I haven't.
The only thing I've seen, and it's small, is, Evander Kane was briefly linked to Colorado and Dallas, and Evander Kane recently followed a Texas-based company on his Instagram.
Oh, gosh.
And so people have speculated, he's going to Dallas, and I won't weigh in on that any more than to giggle, but I do hope it's not Colorado. And
so that was another name that was mentioned by Elliot this morning, and he listed a couple teams, and Colorado was not among the teams that he listed. So again, the Avs always do stuff that you don't see coming.
Right.
So their name not being on a list or whatever, I never, take that as like gospel, but I did find that interesting that he did list a couple teams as potential landing spots for Evander Kane. If he is to get moved, he also threw that out there that there may not be a suitor for it, but Colorado was not among the teams listed. And truthfully, Megan, even take the cultural stuff out of it for both Kane and Panarin, I don't think the player makes a lot of sense in either case. And then you add in the off-ice stuff, and it's like, ooh, I'm good.
Yeah. I can see them wanting to get tougher to play against, but Evander Kane in the playoffs is such a liability. He's so undisciplined, and you can see the moment where he just kind of loses it. And you do not want a player who is mentally fragile like that in a playoff setting specifically, and then disciplinarily costs you. So anyways,
right.
Not interested.
Not interested. All right. That's going to do it for today, folks. Avs are back at it tomorrow morning if you're here in Colorado, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So one more game on this break, and then one more game on this road trip, then 2 more games before the Olympic break. So the Avs have a little bit of time here to right the ship, Megan, and go into the break with a good feeling in their bellies, good taste in their mouth, whatever cliche you want to use. That's going to do it. Any final thoughts?
No. Have a good weekend.
That's about it, folks. Have a great weekend. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. John behind the glass today, making it happen better than anyone as always. You guys have a great weekend out there. Stay safe. We'll talk to you guys from these chairs on Monday.